take
it's
it very
kids.
seriously.
It's 16-year-olds like having fun. Like it's not
Yeah.
that big a deal. But parents, I mean, will yell at the umpires and get into this whole thing and
Yeah.
argue with other parents. And it's like, come on now. Like that's not what this should be about.
But I think what's happening for them is they're in pain. No one's just an asshole, right? They're not doing it to be assholes. They're doing it because they're in pain. Something's happening for them that they don't understand. And they're projecting that out onto that field, yelling at their kid. They can't stand how it's making them feel that their kid isn't doing better. And it could be their own past, right? They're having some sort of trauma response.
Hi, Pod people. I'm Heather.
I'm Stacy.
And welcome to this week's episode of Why Do People Do That?
So, this week we are talking about a topic that is helpful for parents, we hope.
Yes.
And this topic has been inspired by a good friend of ours. We were having a chat with her last week, and she brought up a topic that we think is extremely important. And so we thought, let's come in and talk about it here so that we can help everybody else.
And I wish she would have been here.
We did want her to come, but she felt nervous to come. And that's okay. So she's here in
You're going to
spirit.
regret it, Janie.
Oh, no, you weren't supposed to say her name.
Shh.
Anyway. Hey, pod people. So I'm just going to take a second here to interrupt my own podcast to tell you that Janie regretted not being here for this episode to tell her own story. So she decided to make a recording of herself, really just bringing in the points that she wanted to share with you so much because she felt like her story could help you. So here she is.
Hi, Janie. We're so glad that you decided to join us.
I'm glad to be here.
I know that you were kind of back and forth. You were going to come on. You were. So we're so excited that you decided to join, just to be able to tell us a little bit in your own words and share your message for parents in a way that can really help them. I know that's really important to you.
Yes.
And that's why we're here.
So do you want me to start with a little background, or should we just dive right into the good stuff?
Whatever you would like to do. You can certainly give us a little bit of background. You know, we didn't give really details. We didn't talk about your son or what sport he played or anything like that. So I think what we really want to understand most importantly is what your experience was and how that can help other people that might be listening that are going through the same thing right now.
Okay, so my son started swimming when he was 6. And when the kids were between like 6 and 9, I would say the playing field was very even. Everybody was the same and adorable, and all the parents were friends, and everybody was very happy. And as they got closer to 10, 11, 12, the divide started. The good kids and then the mediocre kids. Mm-hmm. And when the divide started, the climate completely changed on the pool deck and for me in particular. Yeah.
Talk about that. What was that like?
So when I was a kid, I was very mediocre, not in a bad way. Mediocrity is not bad. But I compared myself often to people who are not mediocre. So I kind of put that on my son. You know, when I saw that he was a mediocre swimmer, all of a sudden, basically, I was like, we suck. And the fast kids are the good kids, the cool kids, and their parents are the cool moms and dads. And we are just like over here. We don't belong with them. It was a hierarchy.
So there's 3 elements that you're talking about here that are really standing out for me that I think are so important. Number 1, you're talking about the divide, which is definitely culturally something that we see here in America anyway, right? It's sort of like, you know, how it is with sports. You know, there's the good kids and then the kids that are not as good, right? And then there's definitely this need or this want to be good and to be better and to be one of the best, right? We place so much importance on that you need to be one of the best. And that's just part of our culture here. And so it is hard for anybody as a human being, I think, to be in that experience and to see this divide and to not feel feelings about it. The other piece of it is you're talking about, you know, in your own childhood that, you know, being mediocre, so to speak, was something that was uncomfortable for you. And now here you are, the parent of a child who is showing up in this sport as a mediocre player in this
Mhm.
sport, right? And
Yep.
so the different things that are going to come up for you, obviously, you're going to have this trauma response to it, because it's going to be like, I already went through this and now I have to go through this again. Then
Yeah.
there's going to be this piece of, if it was uncomfortable for me, then it's going to probably be uncomfortable for my kid. And I want to protect him from that. I don't want him to feel the way that I felt. And I also don't want to relive it.
Right. Those were exactly the two things that were happening. And I remember when he was little, when he was like 8, he got out of the pool and he said to me, Mommy, I feel so bad for the fast kids. They have so much pressure. And I was like, oh shit, this isn't going to go well. uh, and he was so cute. And as the reason I'm here is because
Yeah.
in hindsight, I was looking at and for all the wrong things. And I missed such an opportunity of just sitting and like marveling at my amazing son and just being proud. I completely just missed the ball on that. I was so busy worrying what other people thought of him and what other people thought of me that I lost sight of what was important.
You were in fight or flight and needing to protect the both of you. And so you weren't present, right? So if you look back in hindsight, right, you brought up the word hindsight. So, right, if you were to kind of look back and reflect, one of the things that can really help our pod people that are listening or watching, right, is what are the things you should have been paying attention to?
Number one, my son is so amazing just as a human being. And it just oozes out of him. I mean, Heather knows him. He's just a great kid. And the coaches loved him. He was coachable. He used to sit next to the coach or follow the coach up and down the pool deck. He was such a good student. He was a great teammate. He was always cheering his friends on, congratulating them, high-fiving them. He always tried his hardest. He really did. One time I actually said to him, like, couldn't you go a little faster? And he was little. He was like 7 or 8. And he said, did you see me killing myself out there? So, and we laughed about it, me and my mom at the time, but like, it really, I just did not look at those things, that he was just an amazing teammate, an amazing human, an amazing just student, everything.
Yeah. So,
And just such a joy to witness as a person.
and you did enjoy witnessing those things, right? The fact that you can remember those things now and in hindsight, you can process and you can really reflect on it means that you were noticing those things and you were enjoying those things, right? And so,
I absolutely was. And I think that I was more worried about how other people felt about us, because of course they didn't see those things in him. If he was on a team, all they saw was like he wasn't pulling his weight on the team. So that stuff became like secondary to me. Like, that stuff's important, but it isn't as important as how fast he goes, because then he's going to disappoint everybody. And then they're going to look at me like I made this creature who just didn't, pull his weight.
There's a lot of pressure, self-imposed pressure on sports moms, because you don't want to be the parent of the kid that makes the team lose or that, drops the team back.
yeah, there's a lot of external pressure, right? Culturally, it's just like, I want to fit in. I don't want to be looked at badly. I want to be, presenting myself and my child as, look at how great we are. Look at how hard we try. Look at what we're doing. Look what we're capable of. But what you're saying is now being on the outside of it, because it's over and you've gotten through the tunnel and you're on the other side and you're reflecting back. You're saying to us, this is your message. Fuck that. That's not what's important. And I'm pissed that I let that be that I allowed society to dictate that that's what should have been important, because it ruined what could have been such an amazing experience for me and my son.
That is like, you literally are hitting the nail on the head. I'm so mad at myself because I could never get that precious time back. And I spent so much time like weeping in the bleachers because like the cool moms, didn't value my son the way I did.
They were cool because their sons were faster.
That's the perception.
Yeah. Yeah. You wanted to fit in. You wanted to be accepted. You wanted them to accept your son. You wanted to feel safe and you wanted him to feel safe. And your perception was if you weren't feeling safe, how could he possibly be feeling safe?
I remember at some point I said to one of the swim dads, like, I'm thinking of switching his team because, I think maybe he can get better instruction at a different team. And the guy actually said to me, the way he swims, it doesn't really matter.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know. And it was such a gut punch. So then I felt we needed to prove that, this isn't him bringing his A game. He's capable of more. And that's when like the private lessons started and, the bribery and, because then I felt we had something to prove.
Yeah.
And it wasn't him asking for private lessons. It was you wanting him to get private lessons because we
100%.
had something to prove.
We had something to prove, like as a team.
Yeah. You were being judged as a mother based on how he performed. That's how you felt.
I did.
Yeah. And some of that might be true, but
Yeah.
that's not the way society should be. And that's not what we should be allowing ourselves to be susceptible to and dragged into. Because let me ask you something. All these boys that swam with him, how many of them are on the Olympics today?
0.
How many of them are swimming professionally?
None. Not a one.
Yeah. Is your son graduated from college
Yep.
and he has a job
He has a job.
and a girlfriend and he's doing amazing.
He's amazing.
Yeah. And none of that mattered. Whether right now, today, at this moment, what he got on those meets didn't matter, right? What mattered was that he showed up, that he was part of a team, that he was coachable, that
He
he
was
felt good about
brave.
himself,
Yeah.
brave,
I
very
mean, really,
brave.
it is brave to do the things that he did in front of an audience, basically, and critical eyes. And he always looked up to see me when he was done, to see my reaction. And I don't know what my reaction looked like, honestly, because I was in the moment. But I'm trying to spare people the shame that I feel now. As dramatic as that sounds, I have a lot of.
So, what should that reaction look like to the moms that are still in it? What should their child see when they look up and see their mom sitting in the stands?
You better be smiling with a thumbs up and you better mean it.
No matter what.
No matter what. Because I remember as the swimming went on and he became a little more aware of like the divide, he would not do well and he would look at me and give me a thumbs down. Or we would shrug at each other. And I remember us being like, oh well. And I remember thinking like, oh, patting myself on the back, like that was a good reaction. It was like not, but now, oh my God, I
Yeah.
literally would just have hearts popping out of my eyes for him showing up and just being so great.
Yeah, because the fact that he showed up, even though there was pressure and even though he wasn't the best swimmer and he didn't care and he loved himself anyway, which is definitely a testament to you because it means you were doing something right there. He loved himself anyway, he had good self-esteem, right? And he wanted to keep trying and he wanted to keep going, right? That is what's going to make him successful in life, right? It's the effort, not the outcome. Not everyone's going to be the best swimmer. It's
Yep.
about showing up, right? And
All the
trying, being
skills.
resilient.
All the skills that he learned by participating in this sport made him an amazing, even more amazing adult.
Mm-hmm.
The coachability, the sportsmanship, the team player. Those are the things that parents should be looking for in their child and not the speed or the talent or whatever the goals.
Yeah, be present and be so grateful for the opportunity to bond with your kid, to show up for them, to show them that what is important to them is important to you, and reward the effort, not the outcome. This is a good callback, Heather, to our participation trophy episode.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I have to say, on a side note, I was very anti-participation trophy until I listened to that. Now I am like all participation trophy.
Yeah, this is participation trophy stuff right here,
Really
right?
is.
So any last words or thoughts you want to leave our pod people with before we end?
If I knew how fast his life, his childhood was going to go, I never would have taken my eyes off of him. And I looked away too much to try to protect myself.
Yeah. And you wish you didn't do
Wow.
that. You want to be present.
Yeah.
Well, Janie, what I'll say to you and to the rest of the pod people listening, right? It's not over. He's still here, right? He's
Yes.
24 and one day he'll be 34 and one day he'll be 44. So you've got the next 10, 20 or more years with him, right? To live your lives together as mother and son. So whatever you've learned, reflect on it, evolve, keep going, right? Don't beat yourself up, understand yourself, because that's how we grow and we feel better and we do better in life, right? Just like you have to accept him for who he is and how hard he tried, you have to do the same for yourself, right? We're all just human. And so we're going to be human no matter what.
Yeah. Thank you. This was like therapy for me too.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Jeannie. That was so helpful. All right, back to the show. This episode has been inspired by our friend. And so I think a good place to start really is maybe just starting with her story a little bit, and just sort of take it from there. So there's this concept out there, and I know that you parents know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, dig in deep, search within, because it exists inside of all of us a little bit, I think. So it's this idea of seeing our children as an extension of ourselves, and this tendency that we have as parents to a combination of things. I think in some ways we live vicariously through our children sometimes.
Yes.
We have this want, need, urge, desire for them to do things that we wished we had done, or to do things better than we had done them, or, to finish our unfinished business for us. And, that would be that vicarious life situation, right? Like, I didn't get to do this, so you do it. Or I really loved doing this,
So you have to do it.
and you have to do it because I don't get to do it anymore. And maybe you can do it better than I did because I didn't always feel so great about myself. And maybe I'll feel better about myself now because you'll do it, right? And then there's other situations that aren't necessarily so much about vicariously living through our children, but sometimes it's really more self-esteem based. And so parents do have a tendency to feel like their children have to prove to them that they're a good parent, right? Like, I'm going to watch what my child does. And this is not a conscious thing. This is more of like an unconscious thing, which is why I want you guys to really search within and ask yourselves if this is happening. It's, I need my child to do X, Y, and Z this way so that I can feel like I'm a good parent, right? It's more of like this need to have your child perform in a certain way so that you can feel good about yourself. And so that would be self-esteem based, which is a little bit different than the parents that are living vicariously through their children, right? So it's coming from a different place. But nonetheless, it can affect children.
Absolutely.
It can be really, unfortunately, detrimental to their self-esteem and their sense of self and the growth of their own identity. It can cause, this
Depression, anxiety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it could cause for the parent even this feeling of pressure and overwhelm that then creates this rift between the parent and child. And it can create this toxic combination, right? That really can affect and interfere with the relationship. And it could interfere with the relationship in the marriage as well. You can have, husbands and wives, or husbands and husbands and wives, whatever it is. You can have them even fighting and arguing with each other if one sees the other sort of
Pushing too
projecting
hard
and
or
pushing and all of that. So all that being said,
before we even, go
Yes.
into that, societally, things have changed. When we grew up, like, you would play a sport or be in a club or something. Now, I think it's totally acceptable, and really it's encouraged, and it's the norm to have your kid in Mandarin and violin and karate and a million different, extracurriculars and activities and sports and clubs. And that's become kind of what people expect. So as a parent, if you're not doing that, it's like, am I a good enough parent? Like, my kid doesn't take Mandarin. Or
No.
isn't my 4-year-old
Oh,
isn't in a
no.
language.
You're a terrible mother. There it is. You're 100% right. And I think that's exactly what it's about. And so, what I'd like to kind of explore today is all the different places that that's coming from. Because I think you're right. I think a lot of it is societal. I think that it is definitely external and it's coming towards us from all different places. I know that this comes up a lot here, but social media is definitely one of the culprits, right, that we have to take a look at. So there is absolutely this culture that we're living in here in America anyway, where there is an expectation that we feel as parents that we're supposed to have our child involved in 47 billion different extracurricular activities. And if we don't, we are failing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God. I remember, and I think I talked about this in another podcast, but I don't remember which one. I remember like when my daughter was in elementary school, listening to a bunch of mothers talking at some school event that we were all at, and then leaving that day and being like, I don't have my kids signed up for a foreign language. And they were like in 3rd grade. And I remember just feeling like a loser as a mother. And I remember feeling like real anxiety, like real fear. Is my kid going to fall behind? Is she going to not be up to par with all of the other kids? Am I failing her? What's going to happen to her, right? If all the other 5th graders are speaking French and she only speaks English, right? I mean, there's, I think, a lot of fear that comes to play here with parents when they're listening to other parents talk, or they're seeing other parents posting on social media.
Yes.
Oh my God, look, this kid made the honor roll and that kid is MVP of her softball team. And that kid is, oh, look at her. She's playing softball. Now she's playing basketball. Now she's playing hockey. Now
Also
she's playing
taking
soccer
American Sign Language.
and taking American Sign Language. And there she is at a dance competition, right? I think that we see all of this. And if our child isn't doing it, maybe we feel some disappointment in our kid. Well, how come my kid's not so motivated? How come my kid's not asking to do all these things? But I think at the core of it, it's about our relationship with ourself. You know, am I a failure as a mother? And I have to prove to everybody else, to all the other moms out there and to all the other people in my family and all the other people in my community and everybody out there in Facebook world that is watching my posts, I have to prove to everybody that I'm a good enough mother by having these posts to post, right?
These activities and these extracurriculars and sports and things.
Look what my kid is doing. And so I think there's an enormous amount of pressure that parents, all parents, mothers and fathers alike, are feeling to, you know, to be able to show everybody else, right? And even if you're not a poster, right? Even if you're not posting, you're not showing everybody else. It's how you feel inside, right? And so a lot of it isn't about posting, but it's about going to bed at night and saying, I feel good as a parent. I feel good enough as a mother. I feel good enough as a father. I'm doing right by my kid. I'm not failing them. I'm not screwing it up. And so I need to have my child do an extracurricular activity, or my kid has to get good grades, or my kid has to be popular and have a lot of friends. You know, what I hear a lot, and this is, I think, partially coming from the generation gap, I hear a lot just within my practice and even with some of my own friends. I'll hear things like, you know, I'm really worried about my son or my daughter. They're in their room a lot and they're on their PC and they're playing games, or they're on their Xbox and they're playing games. Why are they not going out and socializing with their friends? Is something wrong with them? You know, am I a bad parent that I'm just letting them isolate themselves in their room? Am I failing as a parent? Are they failing as a teenager?
Well, I think societally things have changed. I mean, it's not like when we were growing up, you'd go outside and play with your friends. Now, you know, they're interacting with their friends, but they're doing it in a very different way, you know, on the computer, playing games, or, you know, Snapchat or Instagram or any of those
Yeah.
Like they're interacting with their peers just in very differently.
Yeah. So there's, like I can think of somebody in particular who, I worked with a couple of years ago. And she was very worried about her daughter, right? Like what am I going to do? She's always on the computer. She's always doing this. She's always doing that. She's not socializing a lot. And I remember saying to her, well, is she upset? And she was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, you clearly are upset that she's on that computer all the time. But is she upset that she's on the computer? Like, is she coming to you and saying, Mom, I'm really upset that I don't socialize a lot. I'd like to make more friends. I'm having a hard time. Can you help me? And she was like, no. She seems perfectly happy. And I said to her, so
what's the problem?
What is your concern? And the answer, and it's the answer I hear a lot. The answer is, well, when I was her age, I was out all the time. I would go to parties. I was trying to meet boys. I had this friend or that friend. We were going here. We were going there. How do I just let my daughter sit in this room and play video games all the time? And so what I was hearing from her was two things. Number one, am I failing at a parent if I'm letting this kid do something that isn't good for her? And the other thing I was hearing was the reason I believe it isn't good for her is because it wouldn't have been good for me. This isn't what I would have wanted to do at her age. This isn't how I lived my life. She's different. And I remember saying to this woman, your daughter is different than you were at her age. You wanted very different things. So it's hard for you to imagine that your daughter could be happy because you would not have been happy doing what she is doing when you were her age. And she was like, oh no, I needed, I had fear of missing out. I needed to do this and do that.
Yep.
Be a part of the gang and be popular. And so she could not separate herself from her child. She could not see her daughter as a complete separate entity from her and who she was. It was hard for her to really understand that her daughter's experience and her personality and her needs and her wants were so different than her own. And I see parents dealing with that a lot, especially today, because things generationally are so different, right? There is this connection to technology that our children have today that we did not have growing up.
No.
Right? I did it with my own son. He's 24 now, but I remember when he was in middle school and he stopped with like the play dates and started to like put his little headset on and play Xbox. But he would be logging in to play with a bunch of his friends from school, and they all bought like,
some game,
MLB 2008 or whatever it was, and they were all online playing together. And I was upset. I was like, "Is this weird? Like, what are you doing? Why don't you invite so and so over?" And I would push and push, and so he would invite so and so over from down the block, and so the kid would be over the house for like 15 minutes, and then he would leave, and I would be like, oh my God, what happened? Did you guys get in a fight? And my son would be like, no, we want to play Xbox. I'd be like, well, what do you mean? Well, he's going home.
So we can play together.
To get on the Xbox. We could play together. And like, I come from a generation of like, you had the Atari and then you had two
controllers,
joysticks they were called, right? And you'd play together, sitting next to each other side by side. But that's just not the way it is anymore.
Yeah.
Like playing together means you're on your own console, right? And I like didn't get that. And I was just like, oh my God, like, what should I do? Am I doing the wrong thing by letting him just sit on the video game console all the time? And I would say, but don't you want to hang out with your friends?
And in his head, he is.
He would be like, I am.
Yeah.
See, there's CJ. Hi, CJ. Say hi to my mom. And CJ would be like, hi, Stacy. And it was a lot, for me, but I did it and I fought it because I did not want to project my anxiety or myself or my needs onto my kid because I know I'm a social person. I like interaction and I like face-to-face, in-person interaction. That's just my jam. It's the way I am. It's my jam. And I didn't want to make him feel like he was doing something wrong or make him question himself or feel bad about himself because I was uncomfortable with the way he was choosing to spend his time or the way he was choosing to interact. And I think we see this happening across the board in so many places, right? This need parents have on so many levels and in so many ways to project onto their children, this responsibility. I need you to do this, or this, and this, that, or this way so that I can feel good.
You want them to be popular, to have friends, to be engaged in stuff. And it looks very different than it did for us growing up.
I think that comes from a lot of places too. Like when you say weird, I think what it is that parents don't want to feel like other people are judging their child. Because if other people are judging their child,
Then they're judging me.
then they're judging them. Exactly. And that's uncomfortable for most people, right? There are definitely those people out there that are evolved and they say, I don't really care what people think. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think we should all aspire to be there. But I think realistically, it's the human condition to say, I do care what people think. And so if you have a parent that maybe didn't have a really great, healthy experience growing up and they didn't feel so great about themselves, they might have this need for their child to fit in and to be accepted and to be liked because it helps repair something for them. And they may not realize what that is. And I think maybe for some other parents, it might be that they were the cool parent and they were the popular parent and they need their kid to be that cool, popular kid because they need to continue that legacy. Because if their kid isn't cool and popular like they were,
What does that mean?
what does that mean about them? That their kid is not cool and popular. And so I think that parents are really in lots of different ways, again, not realizing it, projecting onto their child. And so if it's okay, I'd like to kind of bring in our friend and her story.
Yeah.
Because I think that it brings in a lot of these different elements, what's happening for her. And I think that her story can really be so helpful to other people, right? So it stems from her son being on a sports team, right? So her son was on a sports team and she found herself really deep into this need for him to do well.
Well, let's back up with her son was on multiple sports teams through the years and did not do well in most of them. They just were not for him. And he finally found his place in his sport and something he was good at.
Yeah. And I think for her, watching him struggle and not find his place, right? This feeling of, nothing's working for me, or this feeling of inadequacy, whatever it was, her experience of that, from what I understand, is that it made her feel bad about herself. That she wasn't able to help him, that he was not able to do these things, right? It became about her, right? Because if you talk to her, her experience isn't, I'm disappointed in my son. He's a disappointment to me.
No.
Not at all, right? She loves and adores him. It's more, what does it mean about me that my child isn't able to do well at this, or that he's struggling, or he's hopping from sport to sport? How are people going to view me? How are they going to look at me? What does it mean about me and my place in society? And then he finally found his sport, right? That he did well at. And for her, it became this obsessive need, right? In competitions and things like that, at meets, for him to excel and do well. And she would find herself obsessing about his scores.
And I think that's not uncommon when you get kids at a certain age. Like when you're in high school and sports become more competitive and there's travel leagues and competitions and all of that, like you become really invested in it. I mean, you're financially invested, paying for, extra lessons and one-on-ones in private. And like, it's a huge investment of time too. So it becomes so much a part of your life and your world. Like you're a swim mom, you're a softball mom. Like that's your identity for those, few months of the season.
Yes. And I think that you see a lot of parents get so enmeshed in that and it becomes their identity. right? So her experience was that it became her identity, right? That her son was on this team and how well he did. And what she expressed to me is that there was almost this dynamic of, the kids who did really well, those moms
Mm-hmm.
would hang out together.
Yep.
Right? It was like they became the cool moms because their sons were scoring the highest.
Yep.
And they would all sit together and they would all hang out together. And for her, for our friend, it was like, I need to get to that table. I need to get to the cool mom table. My son needs to do well so I can get to the cool mom table. And she recognizes today how toxic that was for her and how toxic it was for her son because
Mhm.
she was pushing him, not so much because he needed to be pushed or wanted to be pushed, because it wasn't him or what he wanted. He was having a good time, right?
And he was good, and
He
I
was
mean,
good and he enjoyed it
Yep.
and he did his best. And
it
he
was beyond just encouraging him to do his best. It became a
her
little more.
needing
Yep.
him, her needing him to do his best. And she has a lot of regret about that. And that's what, she was originally wanted to come on here and share, right? To kind of really send the message out there to the other parents and share her story, is to say, I regret that I pushed my kid so much because it wasn't really for him.
Yeah.
It was for me. It was my need. It came from my insecurity, right? And it was this old stuff from childhood, wanting to be accepted, wanting to be at the popular table,
Mm-hmm. Wanting to
Right?
be the best. Yep.
wanting to be the best, needing to be the best. And it's, her sense of self, her identity was all wrapped up in how well he did. If my kid scores well today, then I have succeeded as a mom. I have arrived. And it became, something that was obsessive for her in a way that wasn't healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I appreciate her so much for allowing us to tell the story, because I think there are so many parents out there that feel like this and they don't really understand, what's happening for them or where it's coming from. But there could be something as simple as you've got, a man or a woman who had a struggle growing up and didn't feel good about themselves. Maybe they didn't get the greatest grades, or maybe they didn't have a lot of friends, or maybe they were, the weird kid and other kids made fun of them, or they were bullied. Maybe they had difficult parents that were always pushing them and they always felt like they weren't, living up to their expectations and they felt like a disappointment. Right. And so they would, now as parents, put that or project that
Onto their child
onto
in that
their
relationship.
kid and say, I need my child to get good grades, or I need my child to, be on all these sports teams, or I need my kid to be the star of the school play, or, I need my kid to have lots of friends. I need my kid to, be really good at all of these things, get into a really great college, be really good looking, have a pretty girlfriend. I mean, it could be so many things. And the parent themselves don't recognize that this is their issue that is coming from their own unresolved stuff.
Well, I mean, but every parent wants their child to be great, to get good grades, to be good in a sport or an activity or something. I mean, I guess when does it become kind of toxic?
I think that's a good question. Right? So let's explore that. What's the difference between I really love my kid and I want them to do well? Right? When are we crossing the line into you're
This
projecting
is about me and my need versus I just
remember
want the best for my child.
the
Throwing
shit
a bag
flowing?
of shit?
Yeah. When are we throwing a bag of shit? When are we throwing our shit at our kid as opposed to just encouraging them? Any thoughts there on where we're crossing the line? Anything pop into your head?
I'm just thinking, about my daughter and kind of pushing her to get good grades. And as we're saying this too, it's like, oh, well, it kind of is about me.
So tell us, what are you discovering? Let's talk about
Well,
it.
even just thinking about this, like I want her to get good grades because I want her to go to a good school. And I feel like sometimes she doesn't put enough effort in and,
Mhm.
can be kind of lazy. So I will push her. But I feel like I'm pushing her for her best interest, but it's also for me. There's a part of me that's like, wow, I've got the kid on the honor roll. Like, yay.
What does that mean about you that she's on the honor roll?
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, really nothing, but it does make me proud.
Proud of her, proud of you.
Proud of her.
Do you feel like it makes you proud of you too? Because you said it's about you. So if you can allow yourself to be vulnerable a little teeny beeny bit to help our pod people, what is it? What part of it is about you?
Oh, there is a part of it about me. Like I was on honor roll. My kid should be on honor roll.
You're smart.
Yeah.
You got good grades.
Yeah.
Right?
My
And
kid should too.
right. There's definitely that, parents do that, right? This is who I am. So this is who my kid should be. Right. And there's that feeling of, I've definitely experienced parents who have kids who might struggle academically or have a learning disability or have a hard time with something in school. And I hear it a lot, when parents come in and they bring their kids in, because we work with a lot of kids who have learning disabilities and ADHD and stuff like that. And I'll hear this defensiveness in parents and they'll say things to me like, I got good grades in school. I was really smart.
So I don't understand why he isn't.
And so, but my daughter, she has dyslexia and it's really fascinating how parents very often feel like they have to tell me, I'm smart. I got good grades. So what I'm hearing when that happens is they're saying to me, please don't judge me by my child's dyslexia or my child's dyscalculia or my child's ADHD or the fact that my child is struggling in school. It's not my fault. I'm smart, right? They don't want you to feel that they're not smart or that they have a disability or that they might have a learning issue because their child does. There's shame attached to it. And I think that, it's maybe a taboo thing to talk about, but it's normal. It really is. It's not that I want to encourage everybody to run around feeling ashamed because I don't think anybody should feel ashamed ever. Because it's okay if your child has a learning struggle, and it's okay if you have a learning struggle. We can all have learning struggles and still be wonderful, smart, successful, beautiful people. But I think it's normal for people to worry. How are people going to view me? Like you said before, nobody wants the weird kid.
Yeah, no one wants to be the parent of the weird kid.
Nobody wants to be the parent of a child who has any struggle because they're afraid
it's going to reflect on them.
it's going to reflect on them. So if I'm walking in here with my child who's struggling at school, you might think badly of me. You might think I'm stupid. You might think I'm not smart. You might think I'm a bad parent. You might think I don't get things. You might think I have dyslexia too. I need you to know I don't, right? So there's a lot of that going on. But, what that tells you is that the parent feels very much, without realizing it for the most part, that they do put an expectation on their child, right? To reflect them. Be smart because I need you to be. Be good at this or be good at that because I need you to be. Be successful because I need you to be. This is a reflection of me, right? It takes a lot for us as parents to really just cut that cord and say, I am this and my child is that.
But again, it goes into the question of, how much of it is encouraging them to do their best and to want them, to excel at something for them versus for us.
Okay. So here's the difference. Here's what it looks like, right? Let's use sports as an example. Let's say you feel as a parent, and a lot of parents feel this way, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a healthy thing. A lot of parents feel that it's very important that their child, do an extracurricular activity. And one of the most popular extracurricular activities is sports, right? A lot of parents feel the child should do a sport.
And I think sports are super important. They teach teamwork and commitment and responsibility. And there's people on sports teams are less likely to commit suicide. although they've got much higher rates of anxiety and depression from the pressure they're putting on themselves and from their families.
Yep. That's a whole other conversation
Yep.
that we can have in a couple of minutes. Let's get to that, but let's stick to the original question. So let's use sports as an example. A lot of parents, and it is culturally very popular. A lot of people like sports and a lot of kids like sports. So here's the difference. Parent A goes to little Johnny and says, "Hey, little Johnny, I think it would be really, really cool for you to sign up for a sport this coming school year. So let's talk about all the different sports that you like, and let's pick one that you think you'd like to try." And little Johnny says, "I think I'd like to try baseball." Great. I'm going to look up all the different little baseball leagues in our community. And I'm going to sign you up for one. Right? We sign little Johnny up for baseball. Little Johnny goes to baseball. He likes it. He does well. You practice with him. You encourage him. You show up to his games to show him that you're supporting him. And, he loves it and keeps going with it. Or he says, "I don't really like this." And you say to him, "Okay, you know what, though? We signed up for it. It's important to follow it through. So let's keep playing this until the end of the season. And the next season, maybe we could try something else." Right? I think that's healthy and normal. Right? What might be going over the boundary a little bit and dipping into what we're talking about right now? The mom that goes to little Johnny and says, "I'm signing you up for basketball." And little Johnny says, "I don't like basketball." And mom says, "Well, all the kids are playing basketball, and I already signed you up. I already paid for it. You're going." But mom, nope. I signed you up. I already paid for it. I'm not wasting my money. You're going to basketball. And now every week, little Johnny has to go to basketball, and he kicks and screams and cries and says, "I don't like it." And mom says, "Too bad, you're going to play basketball." And maybe she played basketball when she was a kid. Or maybe she remembers in school that all the cool kids played basketball, and she secretly wants her kid to be one of the cool kids.
Who doesn't want to have the cool kid?
Right.
I keep going back to that.
Some people really don't. There are those people that just are like, the cool kids are dicks, and I don't want my kid to be a cool kid. But that's, we'll
Different
get to
conversation.
that. We'll get to that. So, there's that need that's coming from their own experience, right? I mean, I remember when my son was, maybe second or third grade, right? His father, believe it or not, on his own, signed him up for flag football. And Brandon was like, "I don't want to play football." And Frank was like, "But all the cool kids play football.
Aw.
You're going to want to be a football player. Trust me." And I was like, "What?"
Ew, sports.
Yeah, I'm not really a sports person. But I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Just let him try it." So I'm like, okay. If he doesn't like it, though, he's not doing it. Don't tell him that. Like, that's not what you want to teach him. He should do what he likes to do, not, and he was just like, but I was like, "Listen, I get what you're saying, but I don't want to teach him that he should want to be popular and that that's important and that he should do things he doesn't like to do just to be popular."
Yep.
Right? So flag football lasted about 26 minutes. And that was it. He didn't like it. And I didn't make him follow through with it because he didn't ask for that. So I wasn't going to make him do it. And so that's the difference. And we have that. I've seen parents like force their kid to sign up for an extracurricular activity. It's not always sports. Sometimes it's other things. It could be French club. It could be drama. It could be anything. Right? So I've seen parents force their kid to sign up for a thing because they believe in their head their kid has to do that thing. So again, I think it's okay to say to your kid, I think it really is healthy to sign up for an extracurricular activity. But let them pick it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let them pick. I mean, if they pick something that's really dangerous, if their activity is skydiving and you're not jiving with that, that's okay, right? But let them, within reason, right? Let them pick what it is and allow it, even if it's not what you would do.
Well, you've told me about the client you have whose mother made her play volleyball
Yeah.
and made her continue to play volleyball. And she hates playing volleyball and she's sick over it. And she's getting depressed and she's acting out and she's anxious and she's having all kinds of issues because of the pressure that her mother is putting on her to play volleyball and to be good at volleyball.
Right, she's in therapy.
And she doesn't want to do it.
She's in therapy because she doesn't have her own identity, right? So what happens to the kid who is now getting all of this pressure from their parents, maybe unknowingly, to be responsible for their parents' feelings, right? Because as parents in these scenarios, hate to break it to you parents, that's what we're doing, right? We are making our children responsible for our feelings. You need to get good grades because I need to feel good about myself. You need to read big books with lots of words so that I can brag to the other parents. You know, you need to get A's and this and this and that so that I can tell all the other parents that you got A's. I want to be able to post on Facebook that you made honor roll or that you made the dean's list. I want to be able to post pictures of you running across a field chasing balls. That's important, right? For me to feel good as a parent, because if you're not doing those things,
It's a reflection on me.
it's a
and my
reflection
parenting.
on me, or I don't get to have the opportunity to sit at the cool moms table, right? I don't get that second chance at being good at soccer or being good at basketball or getting the lead part at the school play or getting into that good college.
It's funny, something I never thought of until just right now. When my daughter was younger, she played soccer and she was a goalie, which is an awful position. It's a lot of pressure.
Lara was a goalie too.
It's
Yeah.
and and when she, how it made me feel, like the moms are like, oh, she made a great save and she did really well, and like oh yay, that's my kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was, getting like I was kind of getting rewarded for her good sportsmanship skills.
Yeah.
Sports skills. You can tell I'm not a
Her
sports
athlet-
person.
Her athletic skill, her athletic ability.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that did make me feel good. Like, yeah, my kid made that save. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we are forever as humans out there in the world looking for validation, looking to feel like we're winning in life. Right. And so we have to really start working, I think, harder, especially in this world of technology. I think it's become way more challenging today than it was when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
There's too much information flying at us, right? I mean, I've had parents, where it's like time to pick a college and they see on Facebook, right, all of the other parents posting, pictures of their kids' acceptances from schools. And then there's like a day, it's, the commit day, the day that you're committing to a school and what school you're committing to. And everyone's posting.
And they make them they have a whole thing at her high school where you have to like wear the sweatshirt of the school you're
Yeah,
going
they
to.
did that
And
at
that
my
breaks
kids'.
my heart for like the kids that are choosing other options.
Right. Not
that are
everyone's going to
taking- yep.
college. That's exactly where I was going with that,
Ugh.
right? Not everyone's going to college. And that's okay. That's okay. There's lots of other things to do, right? But there's, because it becomes a thing and it's become so ritualized, people feel like, there's something wrong with me if I'm not going, or there's something wrong with my kid if they're not going. And there's a shame that the parent then carries that they then project onto their child, again, unknowingly. I don't think any parent is like, let me fuck with my kid. I'm going to take all my unresolved issues and insecurities.
Let me put so much pressure on them that they develop an eating disorder.
Right. That's no one's intention ever, 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 ever. I think that we are warriors. We are out there every day loving the crap out of our kids. But we're human and we all have some unresolved crap that we're carrying around. And our kids are the easiest people to project these things onto, right? They're little mini-me's, right? And it's so hard to not see your child as an extension of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So you're not bad for doing it, right? So our purpose here today is to just bring some awareness to it and to give some instructions on what to do if you notice that you're doing this so that you can work on not doing it because it will be healthier for you as parents. It'll be healthier for your kids, right? So if you notice that, let's use you as an example. Say, for example, you're pushing your daughter to get better grades at school, right? It's important to stop and ask yourself, is she doing the best she can?
No. No, that's the problem.
How do you know?
Because I see her just putzing around on her phone
Mm-hmm.
when she should be. So here's a perfect example. Had a chem test today. Came upstairs last night very upset because she took a 5-minute break studying for chem and came across a sad TikTok that made her cry, and now she can't refocus on the chem.
Aw.
No, not aw. No, put the phone down, step away from the TikTok, and learn chem. When you know chem, then you can dick around on TikTok.
Is that realistic though?
No, she's got zero attention span. So
She's got an attention issue and she's 16, right? So
and gave herself 10 minutes of chem, so she deserves 10 minutes of TikTok.
right there. So there is a technique called, in Callie's defense, there is a very helpful technique called the Pomodoro technique where you focus for a certain period of time. And then you take a small timed break to fill your brain with dopamine so that you can get back to your work and focus better again. So she might, maybe, I don't know, I could be wrong. She might know her own limits. So she might know that she can only focus for so long before she needs to take a dopamine break. So maybe she went to take a dopamine break and got
Clicked on the wrong
distracted
thing.
by something sad because she's an empath.
And she's having a hard time now.
Mm-hmm. So maybe that's okay, right? Maybe it's okay that maybe on this particular day, that was her best. Why might it be hard to accept that?
Feel like she could do better.
Why?
Because she's done better in the past, because she doesn't have an interest in chem. And I think was looking for a reason to not, looking for a distraction.
Mm-hmm. So what
She
would
hates
it?
chem.
Yeah. So what would it mean for you to accept that she really doesn't care about chemistry? Is she going to be a chemist?
She is not.
Is she going to be anything near?
No,
So why is it so important?
because you need chemistry to graduate.
Is she failing?
I don't think so.
So she'll pass.
Yes.
So she'll graduate.
Yes.
So what's the problem?
That she's not working up to her potential.
Are you sure?
I kind of am. I really think I am.
What does she really like?
What does she like?
Yeah.
Likes TikTok.
Is she good at TikTok? Does she post
She likes
things?
Snapchat. She likes.
What does she like in school? Like, what's a subject that she finds interesting?
She's taken a child psych class that she likes.
Do you find that she tackles that differently?
Yes, because she likes the teacher. She's much more engaged.
Okay. And she likes the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So does she study harder? Does she try harder? Is she more motivated?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what does that tell you?
That when she likes something, she will put more effort in.
Right. So what makes us successful humans?
Putting in effort,
To what?
things we enjoy.
Right. Things that are important to us. Right. So if she's not really interested in chemistry and it's completely meaningless to her, and she doesn't push herself past the envelope, right? Like really push herself to do super good at something that is completely meaningless to her, but she could be amazing at something that is important to her. Does that mean she's not going to be a successful human?
Of course not.
Right. She probably will be.
Yep.
Right? Because when something's important to her, she'll put her all into it and she'll be amazing at it.
And the real irony here is you and I have had this conversation before that we're both smart and put in minimal effort. Well, maybe more than minimal, but like didn't push ourselves that hard and got really great grades without really pushing ourselves.
Oh, no. I mean,
So
when I was
it's
in high school,
kind of funny now to, be looking at my child and thinking that.
yeah. So when I was in high school, I would be sitting in second period reading my notes for the test that I'm taking in third period. That was the extent of studying that I did. So I graduated from high school with, I think, like a 93 overall average. If I had applied myself, I probably could have had a 98 average,
I
right?
literally picked a college that it was like, well, I'm smarter than this school. I got into better schools. I'm going to go to the mediocre school so I don't have to work that hard.
Right. But you still went to college.
I
And you
did.
went for the degree that you wanted, right?
Yep.
You're doing what's important to you,
Yep.
right? As am I, right? Like, so I didn't go to an Ivy League school, right? I didn't want to go away. I picked a school that was close to home. When I decided to go for my master's, I went for something a little bit, more challenging. But I love what I do, and I'm super motivated. I work harder at helping people and trying to figure out ways to help more people, right? And I'm always doing that, even though I really put forth minimal effort in school because, let's face it, I really didn't care how to make a mummy. And I didn't care how to do algebra. I just didn't care. That wasn't important to me. But when something is important to me,
You'll put the effort in.
oh my God, I put so much passion into that. And so I hear where you're coming from. And I used to feel the same way with my kids. I remember being like, you got to get good grades. You got to get into a good school. You got to blah, 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 blah. And at some point, especially with Brandon, I was like, what am I doing? I have to meet him where he's at. Same thing with Lara, and she did better at school. They each have their strengths and weaknesses, as all humans do. But I worked hard at it. It didn't come naturally to me. And I wasn't doing it from the beginning. I definitely effed up a little bit in the beginning. I got to a point with my kids where I was just like, I have to see them. I have to know the difference between what I want for them and what they want for themselves. And I have to just take a step back and encourage them in their own journey, right? So my daughter is very different than me. She's in a completely different field than I'm in. Like I am no offense, world, but I'm definitely not a sports person, right? I could care less about sports. I don't like sports. I don't get sports. I respect that there's a fascination that people have with sports, but I don't connect with that at all. Like all these parents that are like screaming at their kid on the field and they have to do well and I'm just like I was the mom at the soccer game where like another mom would get there late and be like, what's the score? And I'd be like, I have no idea. Are they winning? Don't know. Don't care.
I had to call John yesterday on the way home from the softball game. And he's like, what happened? I'm like, well, she caught the ball and then she did this. And I'm trying to explain it to him. And he's like, it's making no sense. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. Why are you asking me this?
Right.
Like I sat in the cold and watched our daughter throw a ball and
run
hit
in
a ball and
circles.
run. Like I showed up.
Yes.
I have no idea.
But that's the most important part,
Yeah.
right? It's important to her and you're showing up.
But honestly, I was like, call Jen. Like, you can't ask me what happened. Well, did she play well in the field? I think so. Like, she caught the ball. She tagged people out. Well, what happened when she was at bat? The ball came at her. She swung it.
I think
were
she
they
did
good
what she was
pitches? I have no
supposed to.
fucking idea if they were good pitches. Like, I
Right.
don't know. Like, I don't know.
You don't care, right? Your daughter's there. She's having a good time. She's trying her best. You're showing up for her. That's what matters to you, right? And maybe for your husband, it matters whether or not she's doing well. It matters more what's happening in the game and whether or not she's applying skills and
Yes.
advancing
Yes.
as an athlete, right?
Yes.
You just have different goals for her and different ideas about what's important. Maybe for him, he's projecting in there without realizing it, right? Some of his own aspirations as an athlete and how important it is for him to grow, advance, right? Improve on all of those things. But you didn't play sports. Neither one of us did, right? So although I can respect it, it's just not something that I can relate to,
Yeah.
right? But I think, the point is that it takes a lot. It's a lot of work. It's not easy to take a step back and just look at your kid and just allow them to be different than you are. Allow them to sometimes make choices or decisions that maybe wouldn't be what you would choose to do. Like for me, my daughter's in this field that is completely foreign to me. It's not a field that I know anything about. And it's a little bit scary for me because I'm like, can you get a job in this field? Like, isn't this a hard job to do? Like, do you want to get married one day? Do you want to have kids one day? Is this going to be a good, profession for you? And I think these things in my head and I'm just like, I don't say a word. And it's not easy to not say a word. Because I said, the last thing in the world I'm going to do here is project onto my kid this idea that she's making a bad choice. How do I know? How do I know if she's making the wrong choice? Just because it's different and it's not what I know and it's not the choice I made doesn't mean that it's the wrong choice. It's just something I don't understand, right? And so I could look at it from a logical perspective and just be like, well, we know these are good career choices and these aren't good career choices. And this is a career that could be taken over by AI one day and this isn't. And, what if you have kids one day and you want to be able to go to your kid's softball game? Are you going to be able to do that if this is your career? If you're working in the sports, like that's what's bananas. Like my daughter just wants to work in the sports industry and I'm just like, I hate sports. It almost feels personal, but I know it's not. And I'm just like, go you. You want to be a sports photographer? You want to go follow a baseball team around and take pictures? Like, I don't even know how to work a camera. But if that's what she wants to do, I'm just going to sit back and watch her do her thing and be proud of her and love her and be like, okay, go you. And my son went through a period of, I don't know what I'm going to do. He started college and then he dropped out of college because it was hard for him. And I would run into other parents. What is Brandon doing? He's doing nothing right now.
He's ordering Uber Eats.
He's ordering Uber Eats and then leaving garbage in his room. That's what he's doing right now. And he went through that phase, right? He had a hard time figuring himself out and he has ADHD and there's lots going on there. And the hardest thing, but the best thing I did for him and for me is I stopped projecting my needs and my feelings onto him. I wasn't going to make him responsible for how it was making me feel that he was struggling. It was heartbreaking that he was struggling, but I took a step back and I said, I'm just going to allow it. I'm going to just allow it to happen. He's going to figure it out. But if I push my shit onto him and make him figure it out just so that I could feel better and so that I can relax and so that I have something to tell the other moms when they're like, what's Brandon doing? Right? Then he's going to go down the wrong direction because he's going to pick things for the wrong reason.
And be doing it for you and not for him.
Right. So I have to just accept where he is right now, allow him to be where he is, support him, encourage him, to be here for him emotionally, help him find the resources that he needs to find himself, and accept that this is hard for me and that I might be sad, but not put it on him to be responsible for making me feel better. He needed to find his journey for him, not for me. But that's not easy.
No. And I'm thinking about all of the sports parents, even today at the game. And, it's not that serious. Like, it really should be about fun. None of these kids are going to actually go and play pro softball.
Probably not.
One of them actually might be, but she's
One
not on
might,
the team.
and
She's
if
not
she
on
does,
our team
she
anymore.
does. If she doesn't, she doesn't. But
yes,
they take it very
kids.
seriously.
It's 16-year-olds having fun. It's not that big a deal. But parents, will yell at the umpires and get into this whole thing and argue with other parents. And it's like, come on now. That's not what this should be about.
But I think what's happening for them is they're in pain, right? They're not just, remember our, no one's just the asshole episode. No one's just an asshole, right? They're not doing it to be assholes. They're doing it because they're in pain. Something's happening for them that they don't understand. And they're projecting that out onto that field, yelling at their kid, yelling at the other kids, yelling at the umpire, whatever it is, right? Because they can't emotionally, they can't regulate. They can't stand how it's making them feel that their kid isn't doing better. Something's happening for them. Something's snapping, right? And it could be their own past, right? They're having some sort of trauma response. It could be from their own days as a baseball player or a softball player, or the fact that they never played softball and this is their chance, or what's everyone going to think of me if my kid's the one that screws up, right? I remember going to...
Parent of the kid who's
No. Actually, I didn't care.
Oh, no.
Because I just didn't care about sports.
Oh.
But
yeah, but still, it's like, oh, you should have caught that.
I know. I remember, you know what? It would upset me when it happened is because I would feel bad for my kid that they're going to be embarrassed. And I would feel like sad for them. Like, oh God, what is this? What's going to happen to Brandon at school tomorrow that he missed that cat? But everyone's going to, be mean to him. And they were. Kids are lovely like that. So I remember like going to my stepdaughter's games, basketball, and sitting up. And one time it was so bad that I had to get up and leave because I was going to freak out. I was sitting in the bleachers and there were parents around me and they were talking about other kids on the team. They were like shit talking kids for not being good enough.
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know why the coach plays her. She always blah, 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 blah. And I can't believe they just put her in. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these parents. My husband knows me and he's listening and he's like, oh no, she's going to blow. He looks at me and I looked at him and I'm like, they're kids and it's a game.
It's just a game, fucker.
Right.
We'll say that all the time. There was a dad shit talking the girls the other day. It was like, they're 15, 16-year-old girls.
Right,
like,
they're children.
You're a grown-ass adult. Like,
and this isn't the major leagues.
And they're never going to play in the major leagues.
Right. This is a PAL or it's the school team, whatever. Like, they're doing their best. They're kids. You think they want to screw up? Do you think that kid wants to go out there on the field with her peers in front of everybody in this gym and screw up? They're doing their best. So for you to be a bunch of adults sitting there talking badly about children, and then you wonder why the kids are mean to each other, I was like, I have to get up and leave because I can't listen to this. It's making me sick to my stomach. But I think the problem is that these parents don't realize what's coming up for them. I think it's a stress response. I think it's a trauma response. I think as parents, we get very caught up in worrying about how it's going to look for our child and then how it's going to come back and reflect onto us and what it triggers for us from our own past. There's a lot of trauma responding going on. There's a lot of stress responding going on. A lot of reactiveness that I think as humans, we are not understanding, and we're hurting ourselves and inadvertently hurting our kids and our relationship with our kids without realizing it.
Yeah.
So what do we do? Let's take some action steps to leave our pod people with.
Become more aware of it.
Okay.
I think it's kind of looking into ourselves and kind of examining what we're doing.
Yeah. Right. If you feel really passionate about something your child is doing or not doing, quiz yourself. Stop and say to yourself, why is this so important to me? Why is this important in the long run? Why is this important in the world? And maybe it is important. Maybe if it's about whether or not your kid's going to graduate from high school and you're asking yourself, why is this important? Well, okay, maybe there are some specific reasons why it's important for your child to graduate from high school. Or maybe it is important for your child to have some sort of a plan for what they're going to do next. Or why is it important for your kid to have an extracurricular activity? So we're not here telling you that your kid shouldn't do anything and that you shouldn't parent them. But if something is really important to you and it's not important to your kid and you find that there's a constant power struggle, ask yourself why.
Yeah, I think that's really the big issue, pushing them to do something that they don't want to do.
Or to do something better. then they're doing it. If you feel like they should be better at something,
Chemistry.
like chemistry, right? Or softball, whatever it is, right? Why do they need to be better? And is it realistic for them to be better? And what would it mean to accept that maybe they are trying their best, even if the outcome isn't what you want it to be, right? Why is the outcome so important to you? Is it really important for your child, or is it important to you? And why is it important to you? Be curious, parents. Be curious about where your drive is coming from, because we know you mean well, right? We know that everyone, all the pod parents out there love their children.
Pod parents.
Pod parents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not just pod people.
I just thought of that.
That's
We know all the pod parents out there love their children and mean well.
And encouraging them to get involved and signing up for activities is healthy and it's
Yeah.
good. And there's
Yeah.
so many wonderful positive things that come out of doing that. And I think it's really important to try different sports and different activities and find what you're looking for. But to recognize that they're probably not going to play professionally. It's not that big a deal. They're just kids.
Yeah, they're playing to have fun. If it's really important to them, if they're driven themselves and they're competitive and they want to compete and it's coming from them and you want to encourage them and they're asking you, can you sign me up for lessons or for clinic, or I want to go out there and practice, that's okay. It's okay to encourage that, right? There's a difference between encouraging their own motivation and their own, competitiveness, as opposed to
Telling them that this is what they're doing.
putting it on them because you need it to happen for some reason, right? So I think being curious about where that motivation for you is coming from and being able to pause and see, make sure you're putting a line between yourself and your child. At some point, you have to end and they have to begin, right? You have a connection. You're always going to have a connection, your parent and child. But they have to be their own person, even if that means they're going to be different than you. And even if that means that they're going to do something that you worry other people might not like. That's okay. Let it be okay, even though it's hard.
That is hard.
It is hard, but it's okay. Right? We have to manage our own feelings about it and not put it on our child to be different or to try harder so that we can feel better, right? So we have to also be aware, and that's another tip, I think, is be aware of when you may be putting the responsibility on your child to manage your feelings, right? I need them to do this so that I can feel less anxious. Or I need them to do this so I can feel good about myself. Or I need them to do this because it's nostalgia for me and it's what I used to do. And so it feels good. Or I need them to do this because I have fears of uncertainty. And I know that this is a good path. And so I'll feel good about it. Right? So be aware.
What we didn't get to talk about, and we only have, a couple of minutes left, but is the impact on the child when we're doing that as parents.
Mm-hmm.
You'd mentioned kind of the toxicity and the distance and the rift it can cause in the relationship, the parent-child relationship, but, and how it plays out for the child, like, with mental health issues and anxiety and all kinds of behaviors and all of the things that can happen feeling that pressure.
Right. So what we see is you have a child who does not feel that they have this space to feel their own feelings. They feel responsible for their parent. And so they do struggle with finding their own identity and allowing their own identity. And that's what leads to depression. And that's what leads to anxiety, because they don't feel like they are living their true lives and not living up to their true self. They don't allow themselves to make decisions because they feel that their decisions have consequences. If I make a decision and it's the wrong decision, my parent's going to be disappointed in me.
And the self-esteem and the self-worth, when you're getting that, like, I'm not good enough. They keep telling me I need to do better.
Yeah, if I'm disappointing my parents all the time because I'm not meeting expectations, whether it's on the field or at school or wherever, or I'm not popular enough, I remember once a couple of years ago, and it made me so sad. A kid actually said to me in session, I feel really worried that this friend that I have might not like me anymore. And I said to her, what do you think would happen if this friend didn't like you anymore? I'm wondering why that's something that you're so worried about. Aside from the obvious, I mean, that's painful for anybody. But she said to me, it's so important to my mom that I have friends. And she's my only friend. And if I lose this friend, my mom's going to be really upset.
Sad.
Yeah. So it's like this kid isn't even aware of her own feelings and her own needs. It's all about
Their mother.
the mother, which creates so much anxiety. And then eventually the kid acts out. They get to a point where they're just like, I can't make a decision for myself. I have so much anxiety around my identity and who I am. And there's so much of a power struggle and so much fear circulating around just making a choice and making a decision. They start acting out because they feel like, well, no matter what I do, if it's for me, you're not going to like it. Right. So I might as well just do whatever. And they stop trying. Stop trying in school. They stop trying in their extracurriculars. And they stop trying to make you happy. And that, that's not a happy ending for the kid, right? Because now they're acting out and they could potentially be engaging in self-destructive behaviors or self-harm because they're angry. And they're internalizing all of that anger. And that's when you start to see, eating disorders or self-harm, depression, anxiety, isolation, identity crisis. These are not things, I don't want to scare you guys. These are definitely extreme situations. Don't be like, oh my God, I told my kid she had to do better in chemistry.
Now she's
she's
scarred for life.
Yeah. But I mean, these are definitely more extreme and severe cases, but
I think they are the causes
happen.
of it. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that when you're feeling that pressure and feeling not good enough, it's going to, mental health issues are going to come along with that.
Yeah. And it's definitely would make sense that somebody would be depressed
if they're disappointing their parents
or if they don't have the autonomy to decide what they like, right? Like we were talking about your daughter before and how she's really good at the things that she loves, right? What if you took that away from her and said, I want you to be a chemist. I don't want you to do child psychology. I want you to do chemistry, right? What would happen to her?
It's funny because I'm thinking like she would blow up the school, but like in a very accidental kind of not paying attention way. And
because you wouldn't be a good chemist.
Yes.
It would be an accident.
But yeah, like just those words of like, oh no.
You probably shouldn't say that out loud. No.
You
didn't mean it that way.
I didn't.
Yeah.
No, she would not do well with chemistry.
And she probably
we'll just leave it at that and be miserable.
She would be miserable. That's the point. Or she'd be depressed. Who am I? Right? There'd be that like, what's the point of life? Right? What's the point of all this? I hate what I'm doing. Right?
I would hate to be a chemist.
I wouldn't want to be a chemist. I like being a social worker.
Me too.
Yeah. So do you think that there's any last thoughts or any last tips or any last things we want to say before we wrap up this, our parenting,
what not to do?
What not to do.
No, I think it's just important to kind of encourage your child, but to, allow them to be choosing what they want to do and to actually really listen to them and to focus on their strengths and not to put that much pressure on them.
See how amazing your child is and who they are and encourage who they are and allow who they are without projecting or worrying. Don't let the peanut gallery of people out there in the world and in social media land to influence how you see your child or how you see yourself. I think that's the last thing I would want to leave them with.
Sounds good.
Accept yourself, love yourself, accept your child, love your child. Weird or popular or sporty or nerdy or whatever. Who cares? Whoever they are. They're perfectly who they're supposed to be.
Oh, that's really special.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
All right. So I think that's it.
That's it.
Any last thoughts?
Nope.
All
We're done.
right. So with that, pod people,
Pod parents.
Pod parents.
Pod parents.
Pod parents or aspiring parents. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're watching. We are on YouTube and Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio.
Yep, my favorite.
And all the places where you would listen to or watch a podcast. Make sure that you are following us so that you know when new episodes come out. It's important for you on the podcast. And that's it.
That's it.
With that, I'm Stacy.
And I'm Heather.
And this was
Why Do People Do That?
See you next time.
Bye.
Why Do People Do That is recorded and produced by Press Record Studios.